Alright, so when people ask me what is my favorite comic book movie of all time, I very quickly and easily say The Dark Knight, which is the second Christopher Nolan movie in the Dark Knight trilogy. And the third one is called Dark Knight Rises, the first one's called Batman Begins, and the second one is called The Dark Knight. Now, The Dark Knight is the crown jewel of this trilogy for a number of reasons. I would say first and foremost, a hero is measured directly against his villain, so the relativity of the villain versus the hero is actually what makes a good hero. And in The Dark Knight, we have the Joker as the villain. And the Joker in this movie is really the best comic book villain ever in a movie. Like, sorry, this Heath Ledger interpretation of the Joker is so much more profound than any other interpretation of the Joker, and of any comic book villain in general. Like, I do love when people are like, oh, Loki's a great comic book villain, and it's just like, okay, yeah, go watch The Dark Knight, watch Heath Ledger as a Joker, and then come back to me and tell me that Loki's a better villain. Because, I'm sorry, he's just not. At least not in my opinion. He's really not. But I've been a Batman fan my entire life. I grew up with the animated cartoon series on Fox when I was a kid in the 90s, and honestly, this is the best representation of Batman that I think we're ever going to get, and only in this second movie of the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy. The first movie, Batman Begins, Batman doesn't really feel like Batman to me, and it's not because it's an origin story, but it's really because Batman has like a plan when he becomes Batman on a level where there's like an end goal in sight, where he's like, well, if I can achieve these goals on the checklist, I'll quit being Batman. And that actually happens in the third Batman movie, where once Batman ultimately succeeds, he quits being Batman. Now, if you were to watch just this second movie by itself, The Dark Knight, Batman would start as Batman, and he would end as Batman, and there was no end in sight. So that's what I mean when I say that, like, the second movie is actually the best of the Batman movies, because if you watch it by yourself, it really represents Batman much more appropriately than any of the other films do, because this is a Batman that his path has no end, and he's going to keep on, you know, being Batman, at least in this second movie as a standalone. Once you start throwing in the first and third movie, that actually starts to fall apart. So I actually feel like the other movies hurt this film. Like, this film does better without Batman Begins. This film does better without Dark Knight Rises. Like, this is a good standalone film. And once again, like, if a hero is only as good as his villain, then the villain in this is the Joker, and yeah, I mean, the Joker is just the best villain ever, and Heath Ledger, he got an Academy Award for this, actually. So, no joke, like, this Heath Ledger Joker is truly, it's a very iconic role, and, you know, the film really portrays the Joker as like a really evil, murdering psychopath, and they even call him a terrorist a lot, and, you know, he's making demands, and a big point of the movie is Batman going to give in to the Joker's demands, like, and that's like a huge premise of the film. Also, as far as like kind of like the philosophy behind the two main characters, if you look at Batman and the Joker in this film, they're really similar, even though they're both very different. So there's this crazy duality where Batman and the Joker are basically, you know, two different sides of the same coin, in that, you know, both of them have a moral code, both of them do whatever the fuck they want to do and don't give a shit what society says. And, you know, one's good and one's bad. One kills all these people for no reason. The other guy refuses to kill anyone, even if he should. Like, Batman should probably kill the Joker, but he doesn't. So they're really extremes of each other, and they're a mirror for each other, which you rarely get in comic book films about the hero and the villain. Another thing about The Dark Knight is that it doesn't actually feel like a comic book movie. It feels like a crime saga that happens to have Batman and the Joker in it. So it doesn't feel like a Batman movie, it doesn't feel like a Joker movie, it feels like a normal movie, actually, and then these characters are just, like, in it. And as far as the cinematography goes and the action, this has the best cinematography and action of all three of these Dark Knight movies. And it just does. Like, the chases are more exciting, the fights are filmed better, and this is by no means a perfect film. It has a couple little problems, but the problems in this movie are nowhere near as significant as the problems in Batman Begins or The Dark Knight Rises. So, you know, truly an excellent film, and, you know, it's definitely dark. It's not for the kids, but absolutely just a treat to sit through if it's your first time watching it and you're ready for a dark, gritty Batman tale. And the movie's very dark and, you know, rather disturbing in certain parts. It comes on a little strong at the end, too, actually. It's a harsh ride. But, oh man, what a ride. And the first time I saw this movie in theaters, when it ended the way it ended, like, I literally got out of my chair and was like, oh my god, like, all hail this movie immediately. Because it just had such a satisfying and intimate conclusion. And it really was like a triumphant film because, you know, ultimately Batman does triumph over the Joker, but because the Joker is so bad and because he's so epic, when Batman finally triumphs over it, it really is like this joyous moment of like, God bless Batman. Like, man, we needed Batman. So this movie's getting old. It did come out a few years ago, so it's kind of one of those things that the kids who are watching Avengers and Captain America really haven't seen this film. Like, if you're talking to a 13 or 14-year-old kid, this movie probably came out when they were 8 or 9. They didn't see it. So, and actually they probably would have been younger now that I think about it. So for real, like, you know, maybe recommend this to the kids because they're missing out if they haven't actually sat through this film. And they're literally... You know, like, my nephew will be like, I don't care about Batman. And I'm like, well, which Batman movies have you seen? He hasn't seen any of them, but he likes the Avengers or Captain America. So right now, Marvel is king with the kids. But really, we should get them to watch this movie, and maybe they'll come back around to, like, oh, this is what they meant when they said, oh, this is what a comic book movie should be. Like, it should be like a real movie and not silly, and, you know, it should be taken seriously. So... what else goes on in this film now that I think about it? Because I'm just ranting and raving, but I do thoroughly enjoy this movie. I mean, it truly is like a comic book masterpiece. Like, it's just excellent. It looks good, and the you know, the editing's good, and the whole thing is just good. Actually, you know what the only problem with this movie is there's two problems. One's a spoiler problem that I don't want to give away. It's near the very end. But the main problem with this movie is actually Christian Bale's voice as Batman. So Christian Bale does not do the best Batman voice around, and I don't even want to imitate it because it actually hurts my throat to imitate it, but he does one of those Batman voices that pretty much anyone could imitate. You just got to be super gruff and like act like you've been smoking for 45 years, and then you can pull off the Batman voice. So I'd say that's the only weak point to the movie is literally Batman's voice. Other than that, everything else about it, the acting, the writing, the scenes, the editing, it's all fantastic. Some people would complain that this movie is too long, but it's only 2 hours and 20 minutes right when the credits kick in. So, I mean, sorry, if most movies are 2 hours, it's like just survive that extra 20 minutes, and it's not that long. It's not like Lord of the Rings. It's not like Dark Knight Rises, which, man, that movie goes on forever. And don't get me started on Dark Knight Rises because that is not Batman. Batman doesn't quit for 8 years for no reason and then retire. Like, Batman never did that in the comics, and he didn't do that on the TV show and any of that stuff. So I really don't like the other Batman movies in this trilogy. I really just like the second one. Like, the second one is the only one I watch. It's the only one I want to watch. It works as a standalone movie. It represents Batman much better than the other films do. And you're left with something that's way better than Superman or Iron Man or the Avengers or Thor or Guardians of the Galaxy or V for Vendetta or 300. I mean, this movie is just... it's just sweet. And really, the movie feels like Michael Mann's Heat, which none of you guys have seen, but just trust me, the movie's like Michael Mann's Heat, but with Batman and the Joker. So if you've seen Heat and like that movie, but you haven't seen this, like, watch this movie. It's unbelievable. Like, it's really executed like a crime cop movie. So totally worth your time and totally worth checking out. You can get it anywhere, rent it anywhere. It was a popular movie at the time, and yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen this film and you're even remotely a fan of action movies or comic book movies, like, you are doing yourself an injustice by not seeing this. Like, this is just the best comic book movie ever. Someone said it was a Citizen Kane of comic book movies, which that reference will probably go over people's heads, but, I mean, really, it is just the pinnacle of comic book movie achievement. It's what I measure all other comic book movies against. You have to dethrone The Dark Knight before you can be the king of the comic book movies. So I don't think that's happened yet. I don't think Man of Steel did it. I sincerely doubt the new Batman versus Superman movie is going to do it. And yeah, just appreciate this film and know that it was a moment in time and that it was really the Batman movie that we deserved. And it was the one I was waiting for as a child my whole life. So to finally get this movie and to have it work so well... it was just such a treat, and it was truly one of the most enjoyable movie-going experiences I had in theaters the first time I saw it. Since then, I've seen it probably about 20 to 30 times. I'm not exaggerating. I know this movie like the back of my hand. And yeah, you know, can't recommend it enough. And I hope this review was helpful.
It's simple. We kill the Batman.
If it's so simple, why haven't you done it already?
If you're good at something, never do it for free.
How much you want?
Half. You're crazy. I'm not. No, I'm not.
Released video footage found concealed at the bottom. Sensitive viewers, please be aware. The image is disturbing.
Tell them your name.
Brian Douglas.
Are you the real Batman?
No.
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 No. Then why do you dress up like him?
He's a symbol. We don't have to be afraid of scum like you.
Yeah, you do, Brian. You really do. Huh? Yeah. Oh, shush, 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 shush. So you think Batman's made Gotham a better place? Look at me. Look at me! You see, this is how crazy Batman's made Gotham. You want order in Gotham. Batman must take off his mask and turn himself in. Oh, and every day he doesn't, people will die. Starting tonight. I'm a man of my word.